So it's 2 minutes after 5. We're going to start the Human Services Committee meeting. It's Monday, July 10th at 5:02 p.m., which is an unusual time for us, but we've got a busy evening. Was there anybody who wanted to speak on citizen comment who hasn't signed in? If there is, please come up and do this now. I saw Alderman Braithwaite a minute ago. Okay. Alderman Braithwaite, we've started the meeting. Can we have you come sit down with us? Oh, good. All right. You'll be right here. The first item on the agenda is we do have a quorum, approval of the meeting minutes of June 5th. Is there a motion to approve? And is there a second?
Second.
Are there any changes or corrections? Okay, all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty, so that's done. The first item for consideration is approval of the renewal of the bed and breakfast license for Stone Porch by the Lake, located at 300 Church Street, Evanston. So that's a license renewal, and that's for action tonight. Is there a motion? Move to approve. And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. The second item is the one that's going to take most of our hour today. It's the Equity and Empowerment Report on the community's input on equity issues within Evanston. And what we're being asked to do is accept the report. Pat, where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, terrific. I think, first of all, we're going to take citizen comments since everybody has signed up for this. And you'll have 3 minutes, please. So we have Sarah Vanderwicken, and then Prue Moylan, Michelle Hayes. Those are the first three. Hi. Welcome.
Good evening. I am Sarah Vanderwicken, and just for identification and not representation, I've been working for several years with the Equity and Action group with the Unitarian Church. So my concerns about this plan is that if it is in fact a plan, there's no criteria for measuring success. It's not saying, here's what we're going to end up with in terms of equity here, and here's how we're going to get there. It's basically a plan to have meetings and a plan to have more plans. It envisions the creation of an Equity and Empowerment Commission, but doesn't suggest what its mandate would be or how that would differ from what's in here. And it references a summit, doesn't really say what that's talking about. It seems just very, very, very loose and unclear in terms of what its intent and what its ultimate goals are. Equity is a very broad term, and everybody can kind of swing it around and mean very different things. In addition, it really seems to be focusing pretty much solely on some undefined kind of group of community leaders and employees and staff and officials of the city of Evanston. It seems to me, and this comes from my work with a white church, that there really needs to be some, if we're really going to talk about equity in Evanston on the long term, there needs to be some focus with really changing some consciousness of white people in the city, and some serious educational work and the power of the city behind that. And that's essentially what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Prue? And then Michelle Hayes.
Good evening. I'm Prudence Moylan. And again, for identification, I work with the Society of St. Vincent de Paul at St. Mary Conference in a Catholic parish in Evanston. So I read the plan, and I agree with Sarah. It's very general, and there are lots of people who are going to talk to other people who are going to talk to Dr. Ephraim. And so it seems like a long time before we get to action. I know there's some training planned, but that is still very much preparation for actually getting to the equity standards by which we should operate. So my concern is a specific one that I found missing even to be mentioned as part of the overall point of equity, and that is low-income affordable housing. So at the Society of St. Vincent de Paul and at St. Mary, we get calls from people who are in need, and we try to help them with their need. And we give a substantial amount of money to people sort of in the center of Evanston. The society divides up Evanston into St. A's, St. Mary's, and St. Nick's. So we have 3 levels. So St. Mary's in the middle. So we cover about a third of Evanston. We give a significant amount of money. And we have the city referring people to us when they can't help. So it seems to me there's a little inversion here, that the work of the city to support its citizens who have difficulty meeting their needs is crucial, and not-for-profits and religious organizations that try to help out come later than the city. So I just think in the memorandum, one of the livability benefits is support for poverty prevention and alleviation. Housing affordable to our low-income residents is not mentioned in the proposed plan. Health and work are named, but not housing. Yet we know from research that adequate and stable housing is the foundation for a productive and secure life. The lack of low-income housing in Evanston is a clear example of the need to advance racial equity within policies, practices, and programs in our city. We need to specify housing as a focus for equity and put it in the toolkit. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Michelle Hayes. I guess I'm here as a general citizen. I live in Southeast Evanston in Brummel Park. I recently began a group called Back on Their Feet on Facebook because I became frustrated with the lack of connection between people who are actually in need and the services that are out there and the wealth that we have in Evanston, just in terms of individuals who are willing to give their time and their belongings and their money. One of the things that I am very concerned about with the approach that's being taken to equity right now is that we have access to data in the city that we're not using. I mean, to me, one of the things that can most easily show whether or not we're equitable or in what ways we're not equitable or are is to look at who's using city services and how much use they get out of them and who is most likely to receive, fines and fees and delinquencies and things of that nature from the city. I can pretty much tell you right now, anecdotally, there is a racial element to that. So if we looked at it in a quantitative way, we would be able to see that Evanston is not equitable. African American people in particular don't access recreation that all you have to do is go to a day camp and you can look at many of them, especially the ones that are down by the lake. They are predominantly white. They are also predominantly high income. Largely that is because we've placed barriers in the way in the form of fees that many people can't afford, and we talk to ourselves about offering scholarships as a solution to a problem that involves a huge number of residents in Evanston. So I feel that we are asking questions that we can't support at the moment, and I'd like us to look at data, because I think the other piece is that many people in Evanston who are not being well served by the city don't even know that there are services that they could be getting and should be getting. And so going and asking them how they feel about city services before explaining to them what services there are, before we know what people are using and are not using, is a little premature. So I would like us to start with data from the city before we move further with this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next 3 speakers, Eileen Hogan Heineman, Marie Wilson, and Karen Cartwright. And is there anyone else who wanted to sign up to speak? Okay.
Thank you. I'm Eileen Heineman from YWCA, and I also work with several other racial equity groups in the city as part of the Open Communities Racial Justice Team. And first of all, I'm grateful that we are to this point, that we're moving. There's been talk for a long time, and so I'm happy to see some things down on paper. I understand that there's some confusion about what the role of Dr. Effiam is. Is it to work internally and take care of business within the city's employees, or is it to take care of things out in the community? And so I think some clarity about that would be helpful to everybody as we move forward. And to me, what this is an outline of getting to the plan, and I like that notion. One of the things that I think is missing is some internal assessment. So finding out, doing some surveying of the employees within the city to gather some information. I echo Michelle's use data that's already there and then get some more data, because then that will make it possible to create some benchmarks, and that really needs to be a big part of the plan. I think the general things, talking about people understanding terms and understanding how racism impacts people in our city is important. I also think that as a community, but certainly starting with employees, we need to learn how being an equitable place is good for all of us. I think we lose sight of the fact that as a white person, I probably don't have to worry as much about equity as other people do, and yet my life is impacted when other people's lives are impacted. And I think we have to start understanding that. And our country doesn't understand it, but our city certainly could. I'll be interested to hear as the plans get fleshed out, who are the people that will be going to the various trainings that are available, and how can we encourage the city to use some of the resources that are available here in organizations, not just YWCA, but I will absolutely say we are completely behind this work and want to support the city in whatever ways we can with whatever expertise we can bring to it. But again, there's lots of organizations that have been doing a lot of good things in the city, and I hope that they'll be engaged in this. There's talk in recruiting a group of volunteers to become the equity community engagement specialists, to engage underrepresented groups. I would love to know what they're going to get engaged in, because I think that would be helpful in recruiting them. And again, that some of the people who are already out in the community could be really helpful in getting people to jump on the bandwagon. It's time for us to be on a bandwagon and to really be able to say, here's the 3 big things we're trying to do. Here's how we're going to try and do them, so that people could get encouraged and feel like we're moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Marie?
Good evening. My name is Marie Wilson, and I am with the Evanston North Shore NAACP. I was here this evening. I have not had an opportunity to look at the plan. However, as an organization, of course, we're interested in the equity plan. We want to ensure there is accountability as we listen and participate in this activity. So we're just here to listen tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for coming. And then finally, Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Courtwright, and I work with Sarah Vanderwerken at the Unitarian Church of Evanston, and I want to reiterate much of what she said, but also what Eileen said specifically. The YWCA has been instrumental in helping our white church get its head around our own white privilege and address how we can move toward action in racial equity. And I think that there are many other people that we've drawn on from the city. And it seems to me that people who know Evanston, who live in Evanston, and are working toward racial justice in Evanston might be highly considered for training purposes. I'm especially concerned about the references to the USDN Equity Leaders Program for a couple of reasons. Their website talks about equity and sustainability, and it appears, although I'm not an expert, that this may be a sustainability organization who has equity using a racial equity lens as a sidebar to its main area of emphasis. I was especially disturbed to see that, at least judging by their photo on the website, it looks like a white dominant organization, and I'm not sure that this is necessarily the best approach for a major contributor to the equity plan for our town. I'd also like to mention a couple of things about community engagement. Dr. Effiam's report says that she intends to attend ward meetings. My ward, the 8th Ward, does not have ward meetings, so I'd like to understand how, I'm not sure all wards do, but I know for sure mine doesn't, so I don't know how we will spread the word if we're only taking a ward-by-ward approach. And secondly, I'm not sure that town halls are the best based on the relatively low attendance. I went to 4 of the town halls that were held earlier this year that Dr. Effiam presented at, and they were all pretty poorly attended. Only one, I think, had more than 20 people at it. So I just want to make sure that as we move forward, and if we really want community engagement, I think we're going to have to be more creative in terms of getting that. And I'm also very concerned about farming out the listening to the community and how feedback we'll get from somebody who listens to somebody who reports to somebody and finally to Dr. Effiam. So I'd like to frankly encourage the committee not to accept this report as written, but to hopefully follow up on some of the questions that have been put forward here tonight. Thank you.
Is it possible to still sign up?
Sign up. Anybody else? This is last call, folks. Okay, come on up, sign up. Did you want to speak? Do you want to speak? Okay.
That'll be quick. Okay. All right.
Excuse me. Betty Sue, and Patricia, did you want to sign up as well? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. How are you? Good. Who wants to go first? I'll let you all decide who wants to.
All right. I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Madam Chair, members of the Human Services Committee, my name is Steve Haggerty, and I'm the mayor of Evanston and one of your colleagues on the council. It's wonderful to see so many people out here. We have a big thing on the agenda with equity. A couple months ago, we also had big conversations around our civilian complaint process with the police department. I just wanted to make an announcement at this meeting because I think it's really important that the public know that we are accepting applications for that 9-person committee. Those went out recently. You can find it on the city's website, and it will be, if you just Google Citizen Police Complaint Assessment Committee, you'll see it. The application process is open until July 28th, and city staff has gone ahead and contacted all of the organizations that were identified by the working group. But this is an application process that's open to anyone. We got feedback from the working group and others in terms of the application. So right now, I believe we have 13 people that have applied to be on the committee, and we're certainly looking for any community members that may be interested in being on that committee. And we hope to then come back to the council at the end of August or early September with the recommendations for the members of that committee to begin their 9 months of work. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Priscilla Giles, and I just want to respond, to continue with what we were saying. We need to have another way of contacting people. If we really want people to respond to what is concerning them, we need to have another way. I think you have about 75% of people who are missing at any rate looking on the website of any place. Maybe social media when they're contacting friends. But I think the best way has been in the past with papers to people's homes. Otherwise, you're not getting people who can't come out and who won't come out and who don't come out, but they still have ideas and things that will affect them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Betty Esther, and I read the proposal and looked at it. It's like a lot of statement with really no content and having clear-cut understanding that maybe not a professor or someone would be able to analyze it. One of the things that someone asked me to point out, your number 5, where you talk about empowering people, and you talk about that you should, what you're going to have on the website. And one of the things says, general information about how to file discrimination complaints and link to Cook County and the state of Illinois complaint process. You left out the federal government, because what if a person that want to file a complaint by the state, they don't go back to the state to ask the state to look at themselves, or even if they want to file a complaint with the city and said, no, we don't want to start there, we will start at the higher level. So that need to be added. Then you talked about just gender and race, which if you're going to be talking about equity and discrimination, then you should include all of the things that are covered under Title VII, which is age, race, gender, disability, and all of the other ones and stuff. And we talked about equity, and the mayor just talked about the complaint process for the police committee and how that people saw that as being unfair. If that is not a thing that should be addressed on the equity, the police department should have been the second thing that was on this list, and to address the equity that is being, people are receiving from service that comes through the city. It's like the people that should be here are not here, and the ones that would have been here if they had the complaint process on your agenda would not be here tonight, because you're at 5 o'clock. Some of them haven't got off of work or either on their way home. Let's start thinking about equity and how people are work. We know that, well, I can't say you volunteer because you receive a stipend and she receives a salary. Then you have to think about the people that is paying for this service. There is no equity consideration for that factor.
Thank you very much. Karen, you're last.
Hello, my name is Rena Campbell. I'm an 8th Ward citizen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Karen, did Karen
Did I miss
speak?
somebody?
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I've got you. Rena, I'm
Yes.
very sorry.
It's okay. First of all, I just want to say, when I heard that the city was going to bring in somebody to look specifically at equity and empowerment, I was really excited. And I really want this to succeed. I don't want this to be another initiative, another photo op for people to say that they care about and value diversity in Evanston. It really, in order for this to work, needs to be a permanent part of the planning, a permanent part of our consciousness and our willingness to engage in the conversations. And something that I noticed in some of the town hall meetings that were originally set up is that the people who came to them are already the people who, it's preaching to the choir. You have an enormous wealth of resources here in Evanston to draw from, and I think that we're really missing the boat if we think that we can just keep doing things in the way that we sort of do as government organizations tend to do, in expecting people to come here, expecting people to make time or get off of work to come, at a time like someone had just mentioned. Ms. Esther had said, some people aren't even off of work yet. And I think that if we look at some of the other programs that Evanston has done a really bang-up job with, I was thinking about the Evanston 150 model. I don't know how many people were involved in that, but there are so many people who are tired of the talk. They want to get to action, but then there's certainly a lot of people who need to do more explorative talk and processing and learning. But if there were some way to allow, to designate space in different parts of the city where there are continual meetings where people can show up and have the conversations, not just, this is a town hall, come if you want to talk about equity. Like, no, this is a neighborhood get together, let's come together, let's build community, and let's talk about what's important, what we're doing well, and what we're missing out on, and what we need to do to fill those gaps. And I think if there were some sort of structured model, like I'm just talking about Evanston 150 because you know that started as this huge thing with all these people with, different priorities or different agendas, but we were able to kind of focus them, and then those groups were able to concentrate on what they thought was important. And I can see that happening. That happened in some of the different meetings that happened at Fleetwood Jourdain, where people broke into groups to talk about gun violence or to talk about community building, et cetera, housing, education, and those are really the main points that always come up in these conversations. But why not let people who care about them and know about them and want to really dig into them have a part in this and use the resources that we have, because there are a lot of people that are already working, that have been working very hard for a very long time, longer than I've been in Evanston, that's for certain. So I want this to succeed, but I'm just questioning how this is being rolled out, and the fact that some of the people who have been doing this and really are committed haven't been as involved. Maybe just a focus group with some of the people who are already on the ground, talking to people, working. You've heard from them, a lot of them tonight, so that's all I want to say.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who spoke. There's really good comments. Dr. Effiam.
Good evening. Patricia Effiam, Equity Empowerment Coordinator for the City of Evanston. I'm glad to be here. So what I'd like to do is, number one, taking in all of the comments, I'd like to give my overall presentation about where we are at, where we intend to go, and what we hope will come out of this. So if I can get slide 2. So we had to work from a common ground, which was what is equity? And so our working definition of Evanston is the guarantee of fair treatment, access, inclusion, opportunity, and advancement for all residents, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented full participation by marginalized groups. If you just take a minute and look at that image, here is the difference, a basic difference between equity and equality. Most often we think about equality, but if you're moving to an equitable model, you can see that there's got to be some changes, some shifts. To get that ramp on the right side, you just can't pull from the left side. You have to do some things differently. Next slide, please. Equity also invites all people to be active participants in decision-making processes that shape how the City of Evanston invites diversity. When I get further into the report, and I think the last woman who spoke said it very good, is exactly what we got at the town hall meetings, exactly who we see at everything else. And that's critical information to know, but I'll get to that in a second. And then the piece on empowerment. So the goal of equity is empowerment is the process of becoming stronger, more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. It's authority or power given to someone to do something. I'm sorry, Kim, could you go to the next slide? And so the whole point of equity is to find the voices that aren't at the table, that aren't already engaged, and get them actively engaged. How we do that is the speakers are absolutely right. We're not going to do it if we do what we've always done. We've got to get out. We've got to identify these communities. We've got to go into the communities. We've got to sit with them. I will give you a good example is we had almost no Latinx participation in the town hall meetings. And so working with Miguel Ruiz at the city and Anise Sanchez here, we were able to tap into their resources, access those communities, and now we will be having 2 Spanish language town hall meetings. That's what it means to go out and engage people, to find them where they're at, and to meet them where they're at. Next slide. So empowerment, with empowerment, historically people who have been marginalized have been given what others think they should have. I will tell you at the town hall meetings, I consistently heard what we knew to do for people of color, yet we had very little representation from people of color. And so we need to hear what various populations need rather than what we think they need to have. We have got to stop speaking on behalf of these other communities, but rather we have to actively engage them. But in order to achieve equity, we have to ensure that those who have been marginalized are empowered to speak for themselves. Slide 6. So where did that get us? It started out with town hall meetings. We had 5 of those. The intent on the surface was for me to introduce myself as Equity Empowerment Coordinator and hear what questions folk might have. More importantly, the intent was to see who's going to come out. We had some 300 participants between the 5 meetings, and what we found were predominantly white women. We had, and our 5th ward meeting was the least attended, with only 12 members, and only half of those optically were African American or people of color. And so what it became very telltale, those town hall meetings showed us, is that this is not the way that we can do this. We've got to attack this from a different approach. We've got to reach out. And so that's where some of the outreach comes in the other plans. We did attend 2 ward meetings by way of listening and presenting. And then we engage with our community partners in a number of different ways. So we probably have engaged with at least 40 organizations. I will agree that there is a lot of great work that's going on here in Evanston. And if we are not in collaboration and partnership with them, this effort will not succeed. We're very clear about that. We're very intentional about that, and have had already good starting conversation about that. We also talked to both residents and staff at Jacob Blake and Prim Towers to get a sense of how our seniors were feeling about being included and how we could reach them. When we have targeted groups, we've had much better success. When we're intentional about who we're looking for and find out where we can best meet them, then those residents come and they give good, solid feedback. Also, what happened at a lot of the town meetings was that the residents that were there often, they were the minority, and so their voices did not get heard. And so there were several agenda items that kept coming up. I will get to those. In terms of industry engagement, number 7, Kim, I did attend the Othering and Belonging Conference put on by the Government Alliance on Race in California. Brought together some 1,000 participants, practitioners in local government equity and inclusion and diversity efforts. And so we had 2 days there. Also intended advancing equity, the role of government in Iowa City. We've been in conversation with Seattle, Washington, and their racial justice issue. They are sort of the leaders in this field. They have had 10 years under their belt. They actually, from them came the Government Alliance on Equity, and so they have a lot of history, a lot of good information, and they're very helpful. Likewise, we've been in conversation with San Antonio, Texas, because they launched their equity and empowerment position 2 years ago. So they're new, and they're figuring some things out, have just hired their 2nd people. So those have been some good conversations. Through all of this listening, there are several things that came out of in terms of observations. First, let me set the climate. So about the time that I came on, we had several current issues. We had a huge issue with the library. It was a very public discussion about what was happening with inequity in the library. We had police relations and the board that was trying to be formed. And then we had national and local elections, as well as the immigration ban. Evanston Now, the question of whether Evanston Now was indeed racist, and some beach access that I was quite surprised, I must say, that the first 3 weeks I was here, I had several meetings over beach access because of race. So those were the things that were sort of driving a lot of the conversation. That was where people were focusing their questions. What are you going to do about the police? What are you going to do about the beach? What are you going to do about the library? Consistently across the board, race was the issue. And people were insistent and serious about that. Furthermore, the next slide, there was, as we mentioned earlier, clear lack of participation by people of color. And how and why I think there are a ton of reasons for that. And one of them is just we're not engaging, and we don't have the city does not have a sense of trust with the community. Folk are really concerned. Folk are concerned from day one. The city is not serious about tackling this issue of equity. They're not really going to do anything. This is going to be more talk. And so we've had to be intentional. Another big issue, and it's really important, and that is this lack of understanding about the role of equity and empowerment. So there is a significant part of the community that feels strongly that I should be sort of the discrimination diversity officer, meaning I get the daily complaints about my neighbor wasn't nice to me because I'm black, there's not enough wheelchair access. And so helping people try to understand is critical, what this role is about. Part of it was people don't feel like they have a place to voice these discrimination concerns, whether legitimate or not. People don't feel they have a place to voice those concerns. And so I ended up initially I was inundated with emails and calls and responding to people who wanted me to fix it for them. This role has to be seen as a more global role. This is the role that leads the efforts in rooting out the systems that cause those problems, and pointing people in the right direction as to where they can really have their voices concerned. So is it human resources? Is it Cook County? Is it the police department? And that's part of our effort. So ultimately, our goal is to come with a 3-year strategic plan. That is the best practice. I understand that people want us to move quickly, but that is the problem. If we move quickly, we're going to leave behind those who have historically been left behind. We have to be able to engage these people who have not been engaged. We have to get them to the table, and we have to let them be involved in the decision-making processes. So to develop an effective plan, we need several months. So the first thing we need is time, and we need the capacity to make change. The city, the residents, and even staff, we need to do some work to understand what equity is, to understand what white privilege is, to understand how this impacts us in the workplace, and to even establish some expectations of what we expect from staff when we're engaging with residents. I can't change behavior. I can't change attitudes. We can work at that through our educational efforts, but our goal is to change behaviors. Our goal is to say that this is not acceptable here. And so if you want to be this kind of person, you need to find another place to do that. We definitely need to build a common understanding and language around issues of equity. Is it equity? Is it diversity? Is it race? What is it? And that's what communally we are struggling with. We do have some excellent community partners who have done a lot of work. I'll mention District 65 and 202. They are forging ahead. The YW, they are forging ahead. There are just a lot of good partners. And in fact, I believe it's next week that we are convening, Evanston Cradle for Careers is convening all of us equity workers so that we can begin to shape that framework. So we're very much in the conversation. For the strategic plan to be effective, we have to have active participation and not representation. While there are good community organizations that are doing a lot of good work, Part of the problem for some of our organizations is we speak on behalf of our clients, and we've got to get to a place where we're hearing the voice of the clients. And I think it's important for those organizations to be out there and to be leading the effort. But more importantly, it is how do I get to the person that's in the wheelchair? How do I can tell you that I was called in on an equity issue, a woman who was in a wheelchair. She couldn't access the beach, and she called me and Lawrence Hemingway, and I went down to the beach with her. And it was very enlightening to watch her have to drive up, get her wheelchair out of the car because she doesn't have assistance, get into the wheelchair, wheel down to the ramp, have to make the drop, and then try to get to the ocean. It's important to hear from her because it was life-changing, right? And Lawrence could see it, and she wrote us just recently and said, thank you, this is the best it's ever been. We can be better, but it's the best we've been. And so it is about hearing those voices wherever they might be. And because we have historically left them out, it is critical that we slow down and that we go out and find them. Thank you. Number 11, and this brings us to the plan that is before you. So it's great, but we can't. Equity is such a critical issue that we simply cannot afford to wait until we have a 3-year plan in hand to begin to move forward. This piece that you have in front of you gives us the time that we need to work on the strategic plan while at the same time beginning to address some of the issues that will undergird that plan. And so as you can see, we have city council actions, housing, homelessness, and human services were condensed down to a single commission. I believe it was last year or two. And I was fine with that until I actually went to the meeting and realized that there is a real passion from the housing and homelessness experts on that committee to do that work. I found quickly that we would be lost on the agenda, and I did not think that for the community at large it would be beneficial at all. Equity and empowerment has to be a primary goal, and it has to take center stage. And so therefore, the recommendation to establish the 9-member Equity Empowerment Commission. Essentially what we're doing is revamping the Human Relations Committee. We do the same type of work. We draft it a little bit differently, but I can tell you there is, there's not a great deal of love in the community for the Human Relations Committee because of whatever's happened over the years. It made much more sense to align it with the Equity Empowerment Office, and so that was the recommendation. Secondly, I don't care. I'll take the hit. I'm telling you, if number one, we've got to make equity one of the goals of the city, one of the primary goals of the city, but we have to put race at the top of that agenda. And if we don't, we are doing a great disservice to the people of this community and to the historical racism and embeddedness and oppression that has happened. We have to identify race. This community called for it loud and clear, and I think that there is the conversation both nationally and locally just demands that race be considered as a priority issue. Now understand, race intersects with every cross section, so it's not that we're leaving somebody out. We're recognizing that this is an issue that needs some attention, that needs critical attention. In terms of the equity training, someone absolutely, I think it was Eileen, said there is this tension between do you deal with the staff or do you deal with the residents? And that is a tension that we're going to have to live in. But let me say to you that if we don't we must deal with the staff, because it's not going to help for us to go out and affirm our residents and assure them that they're going to get equitable services, and then they enter in and they're dealing with people who aren't offering equitable services. So we have to deal with it's both and. We have to train the staff. We have to get them to understand what equity is, what the expectations are, come into some common understanding, and deal with our own implicit biases. We've got to do that. But at the same, so we do that through our internal equity infrastructure. We do some training with the staff. We bring the staff in to have partners who will lead the effort in each of the departments, so that we're spreading that. Be clear, I would love to take all the calls and have everybody report back to me. I'm one person, and if you left me to do that, we would all be disappointed in our equity empowerment efforts. So we have to build teams both internally and externally. The equity, the community engagement definitely calls for us to engage, to be out. I have a number of persons that have contacted me since I've been here that said, we want to help, we want to help, we want to help. And those are the people for me that we take and we train them and we give them formal training in how to engage with communities. Those are the people that go find and identify those communities or take references and begin to explore relationship with those communities for the purpose not of them coming to report back, but ultimately of getting those people, help building enough trust that those people will come to us as well, that they want to participate in our boards and our commissions. These are people who can help us determine. I agree, I'm not a big web person, so to drive people to the website, that's not acceptable. We've got to find other ways to reach people, and so that's part of this plan. It is important to convene a committee of African American and Latinx, and by the way, Latinx, I'm told, is the new, it's not Latina or Latino anymore, it's Latinx, so it's not an error, typo, but I have been corrected. So, but we've got to, these are two communities that have expressed deep concern about being left out and being left behind, and I think that we need the leadership from those two communities to help us shape how we're going to engage with those communities, how we can hear them specifically, and then bring that meeting, bring that information back to a summit, which, yes, would be open to all, but would be led by those leaders to help begin to bridge the gap and bring some healing and make meaning out of what these communities truly need. Then in the empowerment piece, it's important. Again, I said people don't feel like they have a voice. So what I want to do is get our website initially up and going, which gives people a voice. So when they call, they're not getting me or Wally or Erica or whoever. Rather, they understand this is what legal discrimination is. This is, if you believe you've been discriminated against, here are the steps that you would take, so that they have access to that information. They don't have access to that now, as well as making sure that we do a comprehensive training for our 311 staff, that they can also direct people, that they can ask those generally asked questions and give people some direction, along with this continued dialogue about how do we reach more broadly, not just those who access the website or call 311, but how do we get that information out into the community. And equity, as a final thought, equity, we have to embed equities in our policies and procedures. We've got to root it out first. Right? We have to see where the issues are. We have to root that out. One of the things that across industry standards says is equity has to be embedded in your budget. If you are not willing to connect finances to this effort, again, you have failure. And so therefore, while we're working on developing that equity tool that would help us embed that in that budget, I've asked for some considerations by those who are working on the budget. Those considerations being that no community or group will bear a disproportionate burden of environmental hazards and risk. Environmental assets will be fairly distributed across the community. I listened to you, Alderman, talk about how you would not invest any more money in the Harley Clark Mansion when we have Fleetwood Jourdain that for 3 years has been put off. We have got to address those kind of inequities. People of color bear a disproportionate amount of environmental and climate impacts, and health disparities continue to plague people of color and those of lower socioeconomic on the lower socioeconomic end. So those are my recommendations. That is how I came to this place, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much. Committee members, Alderman Fleming.
Sorry. Thank you for that presentation. I have a lot of questions, but for the sake of time, I'll start with a couple. I know there was a survey can you give us any information from the survey? Will you be providing more information from the survey so we can see what people
Yes,
said?
thank you for that. So we did launch the survey. So 2 years ago, Human Relations Commission did a survey, essentially the same survey. When they got the results back, they did not do anything with that other than to look at it. I wanted to assess where we have come from that point forward, knowing full well that that will inform our future work. I mean, obviously, we closed that survey on July 4th. I can tell you preliminary in looking at it, it's kind of what I reported here is that the vast majority are white female respondents, the vast majority, surprisingly enough, were over $100,000 salary. So we're still reaching, it appears to me on the surface, and it has not been analyzed, but we're still reaching that same population.
And in terms of what they said, that population, it was the same type of information you saw here in terms of where we should focus our efforts?
Yeah, we're seeing race certainly as an issue that comes up time and time again. The survey asked specifically questions about how comfortable you were with engaging with others, and there was some sense that I'm comfortable, but I don't do it. And so, yeah, it seems like there's a real need to build community and build those conversations.
All right, one more question and I'll pass it off. There's a lot of questions. All right, so the National Urban Sustainability Directors Network.
Yes.
Which I have never heard of, which is fine. I did look into it as well, and I made a phone call, and I guess I have huge concerns that that's the organization we're using when sustainability is their effort. I do see that they are doing a training next week here in Chicago, but they're bringing in the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, who is the leader in government racial equity. So why did you land on using this program when they focus on sustainability, but they are rolling out this kind of, as Karen said, this racial equity arm? Okay. And I think I went further than Karen in looking at their membership and also their board, which is all white. Mm-hmm. So you talked about bringing those different voices to the table, yet you're proposing that we do our training with an organization that does not represent that voice, or is the primary focus, where their primary focus is not race and equity?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So Kumar Jensen, who is our environmental justice person, is doing some work. He was doing some work with them, and you're right, their primary agenda is sustainability. However, as we went through it, we recognized, hey, there's some tools that we can glean from here for equity, for overall equity. So this is a program that he was initially doing. I've now joined him in it. But this program is to talk about sustainability in local government, and that's what it's for. So it's not to inform our training; it's to help us gain a sense of what their framework is. So it's really an environmental justice piece more than it is, but environmental justice is part of equity. But that's why he selected them, was for sustainability.
But the environmental justice piece, right, is part of equity. I get that. But if we're talking about our equity training, why would we not use an agency that specializes in equity training and government?
Well, we will. So understand that this is, Kumar Jensen was working on sustainability issues, and this is one of the agencies that the environmental justice field uses. They invited him to participate in a project on sustainability. It had some components in there that he asked me if I would be a part of a team to help him with his work. But it ties in very nicely to what we're doing. But so no, our goal is not, this will not become our training piece. This is to help inform what we do and how to look at it, how to look at environmental issues from a sustainability issue and from a racial equity lens.
So what will be our training piece?
Well, that's what we have to develop. So I've contacted, like, for example, we've asked the Y to examine and think about how internally, what does staff need, and how do we go about that. We also have someone that HR has recommended to us who has done a lot of equity work across cities, and she is submitting a proposal to us in terms of what our training should look like. But we've got to assess the situation. So part of it is we haven't offered a comprehensive diversity equity training program at all, and so now we've got to assess where are our folks and what's the best way to get them where we need them to be.
Alderman Bruce Simmons.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. There were definitely some unanswered questions in the packet, and you've answered all of my questions in your report. I'm pleased to hear that you're focusing on hearing the voices of the people that need the services. And I think that we as a community have failed in that way, not just at the city, but even more broadly in community organizations. So I would like you to also be sure that you challenge and hold accountable council and the mayor in recommending and appointing the right folks, stakeholders to our committees. I think that is one big piece that's been missing, and that the broader community do the same with their board and governing boards, not just advisory boards. In addition to that, I was concerned about the missing piece that didn't include folks with disabilities and so on. You've touched on that. I'm very excited that you've done that. And also, I absolutely agree with you that race is our top priority. We're in a very diverse but very, very segregated community. And until we start to address that, we're going to be falling behind. I would like to see you, and I'm sure you've done it already, but I just want to be on record as saying that the faith community, the Black church, is a great venue for town hall meetings and other meetings where you're looking to get more of the Black community in. I think the Black church has a tremendous ability to organize the people that are not showing up to the town hall meetings. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. And I'm also going to acknowledge the residents for coming out and taking the time. I've always maintained a thought that until the larger community takes on this conversation, that we'll stay stagnant. And you're right, it's happening in a vacuum, and it's happening right now with a backdrop of all the things that you laid out in your program. And so I'm excited with the momentum, and I recognize that it didn't take us 6 months to get into this situation as a community, and it's going to take some time to get us out. And I think your thoughtful approach in how you presented it, not with the solutions, but I think this was a healthy discussion that outlines the blueprint that we are going to have to take on. And I want to just call out the things, and Alderman Simmons mentioned it. I do feel strongly that race should be a priority, so thank you for stating that. The environmental justice piece, and I just say that to Alderman Fleming, I think that ties into the conversation that myself and Alderman Simmons are having with our residents around the waste transfer station, and also Alderman Ravel has played an instrumental role. So that has been growing, and there's a portion of the waste transfer settlement that is going to be helping to address those issues and the families that live in close proximity. So I'm glad to see that that is a part of the larger equity plan. So thank you for that, as well as the folks with disability. The other thing that I thought was really important that you mentioned, and I was part of the group that voted to collapse those two committees, and to be honest, I didn't go to either one of those committees to understand the impact. And so I hear you loud and clear, and obviously from our conversation, I think 2 weeks ago, we're going to be focusing on affordable housing. So I'm glad to see that that also fits into your plan. I think, and I'll use the word that Alderman Simmons shared, was challenge. Where we can challenge ourselves is the budget.
Yes.
And we understand with concerns about what's happening on the state and federal level. If we're going to move forward on this, we're going to have to find a way to make it a priority in the budget. So I am looking forward to that conversation and to working with you. Because we do have a culture here of supporting our staff, and I think it's important that you're supported in your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. And might I just add, so I want to be clear for the residents and for City Council, while this document will drive a lot of what we do, please understand I am deeply engaged across the board in affordable housing with one group, in affordable transportation with Easter Seals. We're working with Metropolitan Planning Group. So this is not, the totality of the work that I'm doing. It just gives us a sense of how we're going to get to where we're going. And I do agree with you that we've got to, if we're going to decide we're going to be serious about this, we have to make a very public effort. And to our community partners here in the room, please understand, we are very well aware that without you and the work that you know and the history you have, we just can't go forward. So I want to assure the community and the council that inclusivity of everybody is critical. And whatever way we have to do to engage them, we intend on doing that.
Alderman Ravel?
Well, thank you for the presentation. It was really very helpful, and I really appreciated the comments that we heard from members of the public this evening. It's really very inspiring to know how many organizations and individuals are already hard at work at addressing this really important topic. And I appreciated the comments from my colleagues up here on the dais. The only extra thing I'd like to just mention, and I imagine that we're sort of understood to be part of this, but when we talk about equity training, I certainly hope City Council is going to be part of the target group there as well, because we certainly want to be very involved in these conversations to understand these very important issues that you've been raising. Thank you.
And I appreciate your willingness. I did say to Wally at one point, how soon can I get to them? Because it is critical. A couple of months ago, like I said, I really needed you all's help because the community was crying out for me to be the diversity officer and deal with their discrimination issues. And I said, what's going to happen is they're going to feel when I don't deal with those issues, they're going to go back to their alderman and they're going to say, we're not getting service. We don't have anyone who's answering these questions. So you all are a critical part of this in terms of helping the larger community understand. Someone said, well, my ward doesn't have a ward meeting, so let's talk about what that means then for that ward. But there will be plenty of listening places. But the support of the council, the leadership of the council is absolutely vital.
Alderman Fleming.
So another concern.
Okay.
The timeline. So it seems like these things, which are a lot of things, are happening very quickly. And probably need to be fleshed out a little more. And I am very much committed to this, but very much committed to this working.
Yes.
Not just committed to us talking about this. So the things like the training and the Empowerment Commission and a variety of things, I would like to see fleshed out much more before we hit the ball rolling. You talked about having some time, and I would really encourage us to take more time to make sure that, granted that things are not written in stone, but that what we commit to do is actually doable in the time we say, because we will have people in this room and other people, including myself, who are watching to make sure that this happens. And I think we need some measurements in there so the community knows where we are and what's happened. I mean, I know for the survey for myself, I was looking forward to hearing the results and haven't yet, so I would like to make sure those are incorporated in here. So all that to say, I would like to move that we hold this in committee so we can flesh it out a little more.
Okay, we have a motion to hold, and it's been seconded. Excuse me, Henry, does that mean discussion ends?
You would have to vote on the motion.
No, she hold it, so there are two, unless
Yeah.
we can vote to override it, and we don't, so we can vote to override a hold by majority, correct?
Okay, my question was, does discussion stop now that there's been a motion to hold in a second?
Unless
Normally, yes, I know that normally.
And it's a council rule that extends to the committee.
Okay.
So I think it's up to the committee.
Okay. So Alderman Braithwaite, that's the end of the end.
Should I withhold my second for a few minutes?
I would, yes.
Okay.
It seems a little bit orchestrated. I'm trying to figure out the purpose for a hold. What exactly are we holding on?
My purpose for a hold is I think the plan needs more work, and it's 6:05, and we have several more meetings, so I was trying to be conscious of the time instead of asking my remaining questions here on the floor.
Madam Chair.
Can I?
Yes, Mr. City Manager.
Our intention, and I'm sorry if this wasn't clear, was to come back to you in October. that our intent this evening was never final approval of anything. As I think Dr. Effiam said, this is a process.
Right.
And I think what we wanted to at least get was a general buy-in from you that we're on the right direction. And I think from what I've heard this evening, we have that. But we'd like to come back to you in October. Dr. Effiam's plan is to take this back out to the community, continue to get feedback from all of you individually. And so rather than come back in August or September, come back in the 1st of October. In order to do that, I think at that point we'd also have the responses from the survey well tabulated and in your hand. We certainly could come back in September. September is Labor Day. I don't know if the committee has decided what your plan is yet for a September meeting. Often the Human Services Committee doesn't meet in September, so that's why we were looking at October. But if you'd like it sooner, but I think to give us at least 60 days to come back, and there would be no further action. And I apologize if that wasn't clear at the outset.
Okay, well, we have an August 7th meeting, I believe.
And we have a September one also, I think.
But it sounds like from what the city manager said that the September one is,
Often. I mean, I'm not sure if Ms. Richardson, if the committee's committed to a September date or not. But I think the idea of going back out to the community, it's going to be difficult to get people together from this point through August. So to have the month of September to do that would be helpful. But again, it's the committee's desire. I just don't know that coming back in 30 days is going to have that same impact. So we would ask to come back in September or October.
well, I think the thought was to continue the discussion at the August meeting, was not to let a whole lot of time go by, but to keep this.
Right, that was my thought, was that respecting time of more meetings tonight, that we would continue this conversation before Dr. Ephraim rolls out her plan to make sure it's fleshed out a little more. But I'm happy to do that in August, or I'm happy to do that. I did not know there was a canceled meeting in September, so I don't have the schedule.
We haven't canceled it
And
yet.
if I've misspoken, Ms. Richardson, I apologize.
We will have a meeting. It'll be held that Wednesday instead of the Monday due to the holiday.
So there's an August and a September meeting.
So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, perhaps, I think my preference would be that we not move forward with this until October. So if it makes sense to come back next month and talk some more, that's perfectly fine. But we also want to make sure we go back out to the community, and that's difficult to do over the next probably 45 60 days. So
Okay,
if you'd
but
like
what-
us to come back next month, just to continue the discussion we're having, certainly.
Well, what we're being asked to do tonight is to accept the equity and empowerment proposed plan of action, and I don't think we're ready to do that without further discussion.
Certainly.
And that was the purpose of the hold, I believe.
Correct.
So the question is, when do we continue that to? And I think,
Can we not continue that in August? Is that what, you're saying not continue that in August because she's not going to have enough time to go to the community and
But if this
bring
is
back more
just
information?
within the committee, of course, August is fine. I think our plan, though, would be not to start rolling this out until October,
Right.
because we really feel we need to get back out to the community.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that would be great. I mean, so I'm looking at what I have in front of me, and it talks about things starting in August and September.
Right.
And so I was not aware that that was not happening, which was why I asked for the hold. I didn't know that she was not doing work until October.
well, I mean, the reality is Dr. Ephraim's not going to sit in her office with
Well,
her
I
hands folded
understand that.
until
I understand that,
October.
but the plan has dates on it, so I was respecting the dates of the plan.
Again, I think I just want to echo what we've heard from many points this evening, is that additional discussion is required. And I guess I just wanted to come up and say, my sense is you need to at least get to October. What the committee feels is appropriate is entirely within your purview. So if you'd like to come back in August, great. But we would not want to try to get final approval from the city council until October.
okay, okay. Alderman Ruth Simmons. You're okay?
I'm okay, yeah.
Okay, what does the committee want to do? What would you like to do?
What are we even
Well, we can come back in August and discuss in August. We can discuss in September.
I would like Dr. B. Ephraim to take the comment she was given by the council and the audience, or whoever she's spoken to, and I don't know if that involves her updating the plan or providing us some kind of update so that we can see if we have any more questions to ask in August, and then we can still move forward with the October presentation to the council.
Very good.
Okay, so that means that the hold will still be in place.
So,
And Alderman, well, no, we don't vote on the hold. And
Well, she
Alderman-
withdrew her hold.
I did not. I
No,
can.
you did. Alderman
The-
Ravel.
Alderman
withdrew
Ravel
her.
withdrew her
The
second.
second was,
I guess from a seasoned perspective, I think that this issue is going to be an ongoing discussion. Again, we're not going to solve this in whether it's 30, 60, or however many days she comes back. Let's be realistic, and I'm talking to the audience as well. And so I would think that just like normal things, because we still have our police issues that we're dealing with and some other conversations that you pointed out so well that are still going on, that this is just an ongoing discussion with touch points. So I think signal to hold means like we're holding on to something. I want this thing to move forward, and I want her to continue to move.
Okay, well, I,
forward
as an
with the work.
unseasoned alderman, would like to say I would like to see this flushed out more before she moves forward. So what we have in front of us is saying that council action starts August 27th and to create an equity commission, and I would like some more conversation about that because August is in a couple weeks.
I would hope that you would and continue to meet with her and the city manager in order to see those things move forward. I guess, again, I'm not clear on what are we holding.
Well, now I guess we don't need to hold anything because she's coming back next month with the revised plan.
If I can, as chair, just step in here for a minute, I think the hold is appropriate. And just in terms of process, that the hold is appropriate. We're going to wait for a second, and then we're holding this until the next meeting, and the next meeting on August 7th. I hope I have the date correct. We will discuss further. Does that?
Does that sound like what we want to do?
I think
it
that
sounds like it's
sounds to me like what we want to do. So I need a second. Okay. So discussion is closed for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Effiam, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, everyone, and thank you all for coming. We'll be back in August with you. And
AP&W.
are there any other items for discussion tonight? I'm sorry, that's closed, and we have another meeting. We're 13 minutes late. I'm sorry, I can't take that right now. I can't.
Question for the council regarding the leadership
Well-
and the sincerity of the city council regarding Wally Bobkowitz. Can anyone on the council please answer the question as to whether or not he is still being sued for racial discrimination?
That's not appropriate for this committee right now. So, and your
If you're
comments right
talking
now are
about
not.
equity, why is it not?
We'll deal with that outside of committee, and we'll put you in touch with our corporation counsel that's here, and you can ask him questions about the status.
Okay,
So are
thank
there-
you. Can you put that on record, please, that I, Melissa Blunt, at 1314 Oak Avenue, have asked the question as to whether or not Wally Bobkowitz is still being sued for racial discrimination?
And that will be on the recording of the meeting, but it's not, you're out of order really speaking to that right now. But you're welcome to talk to Mr. Ford about that.
Thank you.
Any other items of communication? Okay. Then
What
is there
time
a
is the
motion to
next?
adjourn?
There is. So
Move adjournment.
Okay. Thank you all very much for coming. And
can you announce when we're going to start the
yes,
AP&W?
Administration and Public Works will start in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
At 6:20.